Hello, Internet. This is Rowan Gray and Anish Evu from Sunrise Debate with episode 2 of our podcast featuring incredible debaters doing what they do.
Today on the show, we've invited Singhal of Lynbrook CS or RS, a debater who took the circuit by storm this year, taking home 6 bids after having debated 3 tournaments in his entire life before this year. Nice to have you on the show, Naman.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you for the invite.
So today we're going to talk mostly about few-year runs, Blake. Before we get into that, we have a few questions for you. So this is your first year on the circuit. How did you improve so much so fast?
So I guess not exactly my first year on the circuit. Like I was like debating, I knew the basics. Like I wasn't like a complete novice, right? But I think like if you're like I used to go like I guess like 2-4 tournaments, like that was like my main thing. And I guess last summer I got really into debate because I was just like doing college apps and I was like, I'm kind of bored. I have nothing to do. So I was just like, hey, why not do debate? It's a lot easier this year, a lot more accessible this year. So I was just like, why not? And then I did Delta, and then I was like, damn, this is really fun. So it just kind of became a way to kind of get away from the stress of school and like college apps, and I really got into it. So that was, and then just like when you enjoy things, it becomes you want to become a lot better at it. So that's just how it went.
What are some like methods and strategies you used to get better other than going to camp and whatnot?
Yeah, so me and Derek, my partner Lynbrook from Lynbrook CS, like we actually were like pretty drill heavy for like around September. Like I think we did drills pretty much daily for like around half an hour, 45 minutes. But if I'm being honest, like I'm not exactly sure what happened, right? There's just like a switch. Like we went to UK presentation in Yale and like did not do that well. And then like and Stephen Stewart. And then just like between presentation and Bronx, we just like drilled a lot and then just like I guess became a lot more comfortable with debate in just like a second. And I think it's just like that kind of happens with a lot of debaters where it's just like you're working for a long time, nothing happens, and then suddenly it's just like everything just makes sense and just like you just become a lot better in an instant. And I think that's just happened with me and Derek. And then like Bronx did pretty well, and the rest of the year we did decent. So like I think that's just like kind of what happened. And in terms of specific strategies, like a lot of drills, a lot of practice. Yeah.
Wow, pretty amazing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's probably like it's my first year or so on the circuit as well. And I also had like a little bit of a learning gap. I think at the first few months of the year, but I think as I went to more tournament stuff started clicking after drilling and whatnot. Yeah. So I think on the topic of first tournaments, this tournament or Blake, except for strike round robin was the first topic on or the first tournament on the new topic. How did you approach prepping the topic before you had any real experience debating it?
I'm gonna be honest. Strake we did not prep we prepped zero substance. That was just like messing around, good stuff. But I guess for this topic, it was actually Sukum's idea, our coach for Circumvention. He ran something similar on the September topic, I think around like his senior year. And like I think the recording of that is on YouTube. I think University KK versus VIPBL. Like it's like they kind of go for this whole idea of like if there's no point of doing something, just don't do it. And he was like this is the perfect topic to do it because like the NSA, it really does not matter. Like other agencies will step in. And then we were just like, hey, why not create a case out of it? And then we just like ran with it. And it was fun. It was cool. First topic, catch people by surprise.
So do you remember like what your general thoughts were on the topic, like broader than just circumvention? What did you think about the NSA topic before you went into your first like topical tournament at Blake?
Man, I gotta think about that. So I think I was just like, this seems like a really biased topic because like the NSA is bad, but then like that whole I forgot what the card was called, but it was just like the one that like linked domestic to surveillance, and that kind of created like a whole like realm of possibility. I think the NSA topic was like decent. It wasn't I got kind of annoyed by the end of it because it just like I think it kind of started the whole trend of just like just reading a bunch of just like random arguments and just like I guess it's just like I don't know. I think NSA was the first time it really happened. I didn't really see that much on NFU because I think NFU was like a lot more like it was like a couple of key arguments, but a lot of weighing, a lot of like analysis, and a lot of like leveraging the same arguments over and over in different ways. And I think September was just like a whole different debate format. Not gonna lie, it was just different. I think the NFU topic was decent, but then by the end of it, I was just like, I don't want to frontline this much. It just got like kind of.
Yeah, I definitely agree, especially, with I think one of the things was arguments had like shorter links. So like NSA was like just surveillance stops terror, just through deterrence, and you didn't really need like ton of time to explain that versus like Medicare
Yeah.
for all, which you would need to like your link would be generally a bit longer. So in NSA it was easier to, blip your Disads, overviews, and everything else. So I
Yeah,
agree,
no,
definitely a lot of blippy debating. So I guess the next question is, what kind of practice did you do to get ready, like before Blake? I know you had straight the weekend before, and that wasn't really a lot of substance practice, but did you like do any like scrim before Blake, or kind of just went into it?
I don't think I did a single scrum for break. Like I think like our first 2 rounds were like just like, all right, this is our case, so I guess we're running with it. And then like I think I did like at Blake, I think like half of my prelims were just like all analytics, except with maybe 30 seconds or 40 seconds of just like prep like one random prep disad. And it was fun. I was like, this is fun. I was having a good time at Blake.
Yeah, I mean, definitely debate better when you're in your mood.
Yeah.
One thing we were wondering is, were you prepared to read Model Minority at Blake? We know you read it at Strake.
We're just like, I guess it was if we found ourselves in the right circumstance, we could read it. Like we actually did read it ASU round 1 against like Hamilton TS. We had like a policy judge that I guess really did not understand PF. So we were just like, and then she was just like, I like K's. So I was like, I mean, why roll the dice with substance that they might not understand, and just go for the model minority K, you know?
Wow.
I mean, we looked to run it wherever we can on Jan Feb. Sorry, no, was NSA was January, right? Yeah, we
Yes,
looked
yes, it was.
pretty often, but I know that I often have like crazy ideas, and then Derek was like, "Dude, you're dumb." Like so. So it was a good dynamic though. Like one person trying to be dumb and one person trying to kind of keep us grounded.
Yep, makes sense. All right, so let's watch round you prepared today, which is your round 6 at Blake versus Marister W.
Sounds good.
Lynbrook affirms, our sole contention is 1 step forward and 2 steps back. The government has incentives to mass surveil its citizens. Thus, if restrictions were to be put in place on the NSA, surveillance would still occur. Greenwell 19 states that the last place one should look to impose limits on the power of the US government is the US government. Even if the government imposed limits on the NSA powers on mass surveillance, because of little oversight, they would easily get around the reform process. Thus, surveillance would still continue in 7 key ways. First, there's allied cooperation. 2016 finds that barriers to the NSA's domestic surveillance would mean increased reliance on foreign partners to obtain data that it cannot lawfully obtain on its own. This is empirically proven as Brenner 16 finds that the NSA coordinates with the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, each country doing favors for one another to circumvent domestic restrictions with foreign influence. International involvement means less accountability, as Gay 13 finds that the United Kingdom's communication headquarters, known as the GCHQ, has a far more extensive collection program than the NSA, and they also have little to none oversight compared to the NSA, leaving them unchecked and less accountable. Second is national security letters, or NSLs. NSLs are essentially tricks that the government uses to collect information similar to the NSA. Crocker 15 finds that national security letters allow intelligence agencies to collect records however they wish, including telecommunications, financial documents, credit bureaus, travel agencies, and more. In fact, FBI and other agencies can use them to collect information identical to Section 215, the Patriot Act. Empirically, Redmond 14 explicitly states that national security letters are regularly used to circumvent FISA procedures. Since these procedures are extremely secretive, Whitaker 17 finds that nobody can find out about the letter's contents, which makes them extremely common. In fact, Crocker 19 finds that unilateral impositions of non-disclosure orders are implemented 97% of the time. This is detrimental to First Amendment rights, as the ACLU in 2007 finds that the gag provision violates the Constitution by giving the government the ability to suppress speech. Third is CIA fill-in. Richardson 15 finds that the CIA conducts parallel intelligence efforts with the NSA, including surveillance and cable tapping. Hartman 13 confirms that the CIA is building a large database of financial information similar to the NSA's phone and data collection efforts. Even worse, Cushing 15 finds that the CIA can engage in domestic surveillance even without a warrant, and their activities aren't limited, as Eagle 17 indicates that the CIA is capable of turning devices against users anywhere in the world, even on US citizens. Fourth is informal agreements with the private sector. Private companies are capable of mass surveillance, as McHale's in 2008 finds that informal intelligence agreements with corporations can help the government direct broad intelligence policy without having to submit to oversight. Problematically, private surveillance is less secure, as Schneier 14 indicates that the NSA is much more secure than corporations, as it has more experience and is better funded. Privatization would be catastrophic for the economy as well, as Michaels in 2008 concludes that if partnership existed for domestic intelligence gathering, there could be a chilling effect and distrust of the private industry. Fifth is physical surveillance. Stopping mass surveillance would increase physical surveillance, as Lewis 14 finds that the alternative to mass surveillance is increasing security personnel, which is more intrusive and risks creating a chilling effect on liberties. Empirically, Levinson 12 confirms that law enforcement such as the police and FBI have gone undercover and specifically targeted minority populations such as Middle East business owners and Muslims. Sixth is through FBI fill-in. Schulberg 15 finds that the FBI failed to comply with basic legal requirements that it was ordered to in section 215, meaning they can essentially do whatever they want. Removing the NSA doesn't matter, as Ackerman 15 finds that the FBI collects the same information and would simply proliferate its efforts as they collect metadata on electronic communications in the past, but simply use alternate authorities to fulfill it. Seventh is local policing. Kelly 13 finds that local and state police are capable of capturing information about thousands of cell phone users at a time, whether they are targets of an investigation or not. This is already happening, as so Tech 15 finds that the DEA, or the Drug Enforcement Administration, conducted 11,000 electronic intercepts in 2014, up from 3,000 just a decade earlier. To keep surveillance as it is, we strongly urge a negative ballot.
Okay, before we get into questions, a quick point of clarification for people watching. The AF on this topic prevented the NSA from collecting domestic data. It didn't like totally abolish the NSA. So when their case says that actors are subbing in, they're only talking about the data collection process. That's where the actors subbing in comes from.
Yeah. So I think also generally for those who don't know, I don't think circumvention is just specific to this topic. It's, I think, kind of a broader idea that like even if you do one thing in a resolution and everyone assumes, like in this case, you stopped domestic surveillance with the NSA and everyone assumes surveillance will be on, that isn't always the case. Like there will be a lot of times where other actors will fill in or other actors could do it, or just stopping domestic surveillance won't actually do anything. We've seen this like Naman mentioned, I think a couple of years ago, there was a topic about the Belt and Road Initiative, and a lot of teams, made assumptions about the Belt and Road Initiative. And what Sukum did, which is Naman's coach, basically said the BRI doesn't actually do anything. And it's like question, and I guess that's the ideas behind a circumvention argument, which can kind of it's been done on multiple different topics, and it's like an ongoing strategy.
I remember one specific circumvention strat from this year was under Medicare for All. Some people ran circumvention arguments. They argued that the private sector would basically achieve all the benefits of Medicare for All within, like, I don't know, they had some card that said that it would do it within 30 years or something like that. That could be another example of a circumvention type argument.
Yeah.
I think it's also a bigger thing in policy. Like they pull like random executive orders and just like stuff that means it's not going to happen. But I think in PF it's like a lot more, I guess, concrete circumvention arguments that do come up.
Yeah. So I guess my first question would be, were teams taken aback by this case? So, going to Blake, most people I'd assume didn't have a whole lot of prep. And, you come out here reading 7 links about 7 different organizations that can fill in. Most he probably I would assume are not prepared for this. So were a lot of teams like taken back and sort of relegated to just top shelf responses, or how is the reaction to this circumvention case?
The reaction was, well, I think pretty much everyone took like a ton of prep. They took a lot of prep. Basically, everyone took a lot of prep, and then afterwards, I think like there were a lot of like top shelf responses, and like a lot of them were like pretty easy to frontline. They'd be like, group everything. There's no offense. They have to win offense to win the round. Blah 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 blah. And it's just like, and then they'd be like, second, our links don't apply because the NSA is like getting abolished for sure. It was just like a bunch of random top shelf stuff, and then like they line by lined it, like, and then they just like line by lined it. It was just like, but it was just like mostly analytics, not a lot of, I guess, structured prep, except for FBI and CIA, because people did our prep against that.
And that's the strategic value of a squirrely case. People won't have prep and they don't know how to respond.
Yeah, no, definitely. Oh, and everyone called for like a ton of prep. A ton of cards. It was, yeah.
Yep. So I guess the other thing to know here, I couldn't tell if this case was paraphrased or not. I don't think it was. I think it was cut card. Was that just a thing for this round or this topic where did you decide to read cut cards in case?
So basically, like, well, the doc I sent you is our paraphrase version. The one we read at Blake was cut card. Well, it was direct quote. It wasn't cut card per se. And then by Emory, we were just like sending full cut card case docs for every round. So it's just like, yeah.
Yeah. Was there any like big reason for doing this after like Shrake or not
It
really?
just got annoying because like people kept calling for like 20 cards, and I'm just like, just take all of it. The the evidence was pretty good, so we were just like, okay, screw it,
Yep.
why not?
Yeah, makes sense.
I guess the next question is, would you have read like all 7 links in a flay or lay judge as well, or not really?
Well, I think we cut down the number of links for flays and lays, but it was just like the narrative was the same. It's like, but I think we added like a bit more narrative at the top. It would just be like, even if the NSA goes away, nothing's going to happen because the other agencies are going to step in. Therefore, our sole contention is 1 step back, 1 step forward, 5 steps back, or like however many links we had, you know. So I think we tried keeping it around 4 to 5 probably for lays and flays.
Yeah, and even with 7 links, your case reading wasn't that fast, so not really a whole ton to worry about there.
And I think people might have been scared of like 7 links, but these weren't like 7, typical links. It was all one overarching idea. So I don't think it was like anything too bad.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So my next question would be, so I think there's, as the topic progressed, people found ways to deal with circumvention. I mean, there's a lot of teams doing really well with it. So people were trying to, find ways to deal with it. What do you think was the best response to circumvention? Was it like durable fiat or perception, or what do you think it was?
I don't think it was durable fiat, like, because durable fiat is like it's like, yeah, you get durable fiat. The NSA does not do surveillance anymore. Like, it's like, I don't think durable fiat was a great response. People also tried going. I think the 2 best responses are probably one that was a bit smarter was like reading 7 responses for why you could presume, like, I guess if you're first, like, presume first instead of presume side, and then if you're second speaking, then I think there were some things about like presume af, but like the warrants weren't that great. But I think presume first instead of presume neg was definitely a good like a pretty like solid debate we had a couple times. And then second, it was also like their links won't solve for our specific contentions. For example, if you're going second, then you get the opportunity to frontline, right? So it's like if you're collapsing in second rebuttal, I forgot what the arguments were on NSA, but give me an AF argument on NSA, like
data sharing, data localization.
Data localization. Okay, yeah, data localization. It's like you could say that they're like this link doesn't apply because people are specifically scared about the NSA according to whatever evidence this is, So it's like I think that would be a really good response because like our strat in the back half was to implicate our defense against their offense and kind of phrase it as terminal defense. However, if they kind of say it's not terminal from the get-go, it's like it becomes a lot harder for us, and we have to kind of generate offense from that, which is like, I don't know, it makes it really difficult.
And I mean, if you look at your case, like, it's not actually terminal defense. Like, a lot of it's like, here's the FBI, they can do things without a warrant. Like, presuming doing things without a warrant is still worse, or your GNCQ or whatever.
That was actually offense.
That one's offensive too, because they get way more data, right?
Our case had like a lot of flexibility. Like, it was the GCHQ, we could kind of phrase that. If people read like information overload or something, I think we had. I'm not able to put it together in my head, but it's like a lot of arguments mesh really well like against the traditional like strategies. It's like, yeah, like you read information overload on one side, but like with this case, you could read it on the other side too, and like it would still generate offense. But I think it also, I guess, like the rounds you guys chose, like about like the marriage round, I think the GCHQ stuff became like really like interesting because like more data is a more efficient data, like how does predictive policing work? So I think it was like a really interesting round. But yeah.
Hence why we picked
a lot of flexibility though.
So our next question is, what do you think the strategic value of reading a circumvention is, or a circumvention cases?
I think the most strategic value is like honestly in its truth value, because like pretty much like we'd win 99% of the time that like this would happen, like terminal defense, there's something happen, right? If they read like a disad, if you read like external offense or something, it's like this kind of like phased out all offense. the debate that we had most of the time was, is this defense terminal or is it just defense? That was a pretty difficult debate we had to have sometimes. But the strategic value was definitely that we knew the case like a lot better than our opponents did. So we could like no matter what they did, it was just like we had like pretty much ways out of it no matter what, So I think that was a strategic value for that.
Yeah, I think something definitely interesting about this case. So I think that's sort of a broader idea that if you have like one specific argument on a topic and you just get really good at frontlining it, I know like people say you shouldn't only practice frontlining one thing or going for one thing 100% of the time. But when it's something like circumvention, where it's like a general idea, there's somewhat of a diverse collapse strat. But most importantly, for like circumvention, it interacts like super well with whatever they're saying. You can implicate your case's defense in the back half, sort of a prerequisite. And like generally, it's very easy to weigh. So with an argument like circumvention, which is why it was so popular on the topic, if you are good at it, then it's pretty easy to implicate. So as long as you're winning it and as long as you're good at implicating it, then it's not too hard to pick a balance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with
exactly.
arguments like your FBI argument and your UK argument, those things, A, they act as terminal defense on their case. B, they still act as offense for you since you're winning that they have more surveillance, which is a bad thing if you agree with the
Yeah.
negative. So that basically means if you win either one of those contentions, you have won offense and terminal defense on their case, which means the round is over. So if you can just
Yeah.
get good at frontlining your case, you win every round.
Yeah, I don't think we lost a single round where we won the GCH2 link. Like that, if we won that link, it wraps. Like it's like game over.
That's really crazy. It's a exceptional case strat.
So I guess the next argument I would say is so I guess these are kind of combined questions, but for some of these, like the actual some of them lacked an impact, but I think maybe you added them later on. But I know in some rounds, I think you had presumption warrants along with the case. Is that if people read like a circumvention argument in general, like like an overview or anything, do you think it's ever maybe a good idea to go for a presumption argument or
I think it's a great idea. I think presumption is. I think maybe it's not smart to go to put in case because people are just going to dump responses in rebuttal, and you kind of want to like maybe have the debate towards the back if you have prepped out responses or prepped out arguments. Like I think we had a pretty clear strat for presumption. It was like presume neg because it's more educational and like policy making and stuff, and then education over fairness because like let's be honest, this skews every. I think I came up with a couple warrants for why like being they're pretty random, right? But it's just like going second is more unfair than going first because even though there's like a bit of a prep skew in the beginning, it's like the first speaking team can use second cross, so they can use second cross and grand cross to prep, but like the second speaking team is just waiting for the first speaking team to respond, and then they can prep, right? So in the back half, your strat gets messed up more, and that was kind of just like an equalizer for like fairness warrants. And also, if someone, I think another one that like, oh, also this is just like a tip for like I guess progressive debate, but it's like we open source this case for the topic. I don't know where it went. I went back to the wiki and it was just like gone, but I don't know how that happened. We open sourced the entire topic, and it was just like they didn't disclose, we disclosed, they had extra minutes, therefore we're more fair. It's like it's like no matter like we're doing pretty good with that, just like we didn't paraphrase, okay, presume for us. Like in terms of fairness, it was just like we had like really well prepped out response to like presume first.
Yeah, I'd assume you'd have to have presumption pretty well frontlined if it's a main strat you're going for. And that could also be useful on other topics because we've had, I think Shrikar mentioned this in the last episode, presumption can sometimes be a strategic thing to go for in the back half. Sometimes, if it's like been a pretty close round, it's worth it to just slip a presumption warrant in there just in case the judge didn't know what to do. So
that's pretty much like what it always was, except for like a couple rounds. It was just like, oh yeah, like we're winning some marginal offense off of like this one link, but just in case, we also do have terminal defense from it too. So presume for us.
Yeah. Also, yeah, I think the follow-up question here would be, and this is something that's kind of not really cut and dry yet. I know like a ton of teams will do like presume us, like they like 100% can see the terminal defense, presume for us. But a lot of teams, make presumption arguments, final and second final. first summary, second summary. Do you think it's like more strategic to do it then or to set it up early, like in a rebuttal overview or underview, or when do you think is a good time to read presumption?
I think it depends on the round. Like it always depends on the round because it's just like, I know that's not a great answer in terms of your question, but it's just like in some rounds it was just like we felt like we were not winning any offense off of our links. Like they debated that part very, very well, but it's like they still concede the link level. So it's like if we win the link, we win terminal defense, we should be able to win the round that way. However, in some rounds, it was just like, okay, like we're getting such clear like offense here, like why not just go for it, you know? And then actually in some rounds, like especially when we were going second, like we had turns, right? It's like we just kicked case one for turns because like if they're going to spend so much time prolonging the terminal defense, it's like, okay, fine, we still get access to turns, we get offense, go for it, you know? So I think presumption, just like having that there is just like very good though, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I also think it's probably a decent, I mean, there's like a lot of runs that are like, terminal defense mishandled or whatever. And also, I think relying on the judge's paradigm of presumption, like, I don't know how many times the judge would vote on a presumption argument, like based on their own paradigm. Like, judge would say presume neg, presume first, or whatever. But it's probably still best to assert one of your own, just so judges feel more comfortable voting on it.
Yeah, I mean that was not really a problem because like for flays, it was just like we didn't have to go presumption. It was just like, look, we win our argument, and like that means that nothing's gonna happen. And we didn't like kind of phrase our presumption, but it was just like in the real world, I think we said something like, in the real world, if there's no benefit to doing something, you don't do it. Therefore, you should vote neg. Like that, and like most flays bought that. I think that there were like a couple rounds where there's like, no, this is a terrible case strat. What are you doing? And they drop this, but just like what can you do, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think the other thing here is, yeah, I think that with the presumption warrants, it's definitely some judges won't really like it too much. Also, with circumvention arguments in general, some judges might not like it, but I think it's still a pretty consistent strategy. I think Dalton or final that Durham reading it. I could be wrong, but yeah, I think it's still a pretty generally like pretty good strategy. And my next question is actually, I think about that round, and I think a couple other rounds where people read like this paragraph theory shell or paragraph theory about circumvention being bad, for fairness, education reasons, etc., like durable fiat type stuff. Did you ever find this an issue to deal with? Because I don't think I've ever heard of anyone losing to it, but I know it was read a lot. So I was wondering if it was an issue for you.
I know Bethesda read it. I don't know who else read it. No, I might be. Maybe we had one round against it, but it was just like I was just like laughing, bro. Like this, it was just like, dude, this is so dumb. Like, you're getting durable fiat, but you make the truth value of the resolution outside of like the NSA, and yeah, like I never really found that an issue because like we weren't dealing with durable fiat per se,
Yeah, it's definitely true. I mean, you specified specific actors too, like other actors. So I think that was I think the thing.
Yeah.
But made it like not really a violation or whatever, durable fiat. Yeah, makes sense.
Never really found that an issue, but yeah.
Okay, so I guess the next question is, let's talk about the amount of links that was just read in that speech. So I mean, you read 7 links, but they all built to the narrative. So do you think it's like strategic? Like, do you think? Well, I mean, this is a specific example, but do you think generally that having like 4 or 5 link cases, as long as it's one narrative, you think that's like okay, even with like less techier judges?
I think it's like it has to be like a very specific style for it to like work with flays. I think flows do whatever you want, like they don't care. But it's just like I think for the reason our case worked really well because like it had there were 7 links that had really good narrative, but I think it's just like 4 or 5 really offensive links that are just like kind of similar. I feel like you can just like put them into subpoint A, subpoint B. You don't need to make them 4 separate things, kind of have them as hidden links even. Like it's like hidden offense. Like you don't need to have them as 5 links. But I think with ours, it was just like it was 7 very different things, but very similar at the same time.
This reminds me of a urbanization case that Anish showed me. I don't know if you remember that case, Anish. But basically what Anish would do is he'd have a contention and then there would be 3 hidden links in that contention, all vaguely having something to do with the impact at the end of the contention. So I think that's a really good way to keep your narrative, but still just jam pack as much offense as you can into those.
I actually debated Anish on the Fed topic, so I think I have a vague idea of what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm a pretty big fan of hidden offense. I don't know if you read it too much. Did you?
Me?
Yeah, like hidden links offense impacts.
We had it on Medicare for All for sure. We went for like this hidden link on pharma a lot for investor confidence. It wasn't that hidden. It was just like if you like just flow the tagline, you'd miss it. But when else do we go for hidden links? No, IMF, no. Urbanization maybe a little bit, but I think urbanization was just like dump, like just like turns. So I don't know. I think we do not go for hidden offense that often.
Yeah, it's
An
definitely
ethical team, I see. Okay, good stuff.
Okay. Definitely a questionable strat. All right.
We're gonna play your rebuttal now.
Start with some weighing. We pre-rec their entire case because if we win any single part of our case, we win theirs. Because currently the NSA surveillance is failing due to a massive information overload. Whitaker 16. Massive surveillance programs have become so engorged with data that they are no longer effective, leading to terrorist attacks succeeding and leading agency analysis search for needles within haystacks due to ineffective setup of tools. What this means is the NSA's current system of surveillance is completely inefficient and is not working. But insofar as other agencies fill in after the NSA goes away, this leads to other agencies having effective data. I mean, you can actually act on the data, which is a lot worse on their case. But then some more specific responses. Sorry, more specific way. One, physical surveillance specifically means you're acting upon your implicit biases on witness in your policing, which is empirically worse than data because data you still need some sort of like actual accountability and like things to like act upon. However, physical surveillance is just implicit biases. But second of all, specifically local police getting the power leads to more targeted predictive policing in every single area because they're getting more data and they can just act in individual communities and not just on large scale things like the NSA. But third of all, the GCHQ or the United Kingdom has a lot more information than the NSA and they're a lot more effective with it, which means that if they give the data to the United States, that means more predictive policing insofar as the entire agencies as well as domestic systems are going to be using it for predictive policing. But then fourth of all, the NSA still has to be accountable to courts, but there is little accountability for police officers in America. That's an empiric fact that they tell you that in their own case. In fact, Slate 18 finds that congressional oversight means the enforcement of laws, which is solving alleged race-based domestic surveillance. And in fact, like in the status quo, the Congress is tracking the NSA. However, when you switch to other agencies like local systems, the Congress literally cannot have oversight on these systems, which is a lot worse. But then go to their case proper. First, you can turn it because surveillance targets white supremacy groups that are part of global terrorist networks. Intel sharing and arrests are solving right now, and white supremacy groups are part of global terror networks. We need counterterrorism tools to solve. It's always their case on scope because literally terrorist groups are targeting minority populations and are trying to kill them. However, their case is talking about like general movements and mass movements, which is like a shaky link in a death at best. But then second of all, you can delink it because companies are currently selling data to the police, and the FBI is doing the exact same thing whether they fight a court order. In fact, Ferguson 18 finds the police has been developing surveillance technology on their own to implement better surveillance, to implement better predictive policing. And insofar as that, she would argue that this outweighs on scope as well. But then third, the FBI is far worse than NIGO 13. The FBI has the authority to do prejudicial monitoring based on race, religion, and ethnicity. They're just waiting for the NSA to go away so they can actually fill in. The DIG finds that they've been giving more latitude as for criminal and terrorist activity. They can also use religion as a factor to determine whether an individual group deserves scrutiny. They can also collect personal information and can monitor domestic individuals without even the implication of like them being a terrorist or not. It leads to more prejudicial monitoring. Insofar as the FBI actually has tools to go in and monitor and infiltrate. Removing the NSA and its media data collection is a good thing. But to go to this point, one, they tell them protests like the Black Lives Matter that have worked like recently, they get no unique offense off of their case. And second, there's literally zero clarity. Like how much does removing the NSA lead to more protests? We look at the BLM was a massively successful movement for the actual reform. And insofar as that, true protests are working right now. But then another first impact of long-term mobilization. One, we get a long-term mobilization. We outweigh on like time frame because predictive policing is going to happen immediately when the NSA goes away, which means like the case doesn't matter. But then on voter turnout, one, and that's because Hollisworth 17 finds that empirically the small difference in voter turnout has had little effect in favoring one side or the other. It just means like some people go up, some people go down, doesn't really matter. But then second, it's all causal because Hollisworth 17 finds there's a variety of other barriers to minority turnout, like inadequate language proficiency and even voter machines. That means like there's a lot of area like in communities with a lot of minorities, which means that you may solve for one part of voter turnout, they don't solve for all of it. On shifting voter bases, first you can turn it because centrists see like these social movements as an upbringing of the radical left, which makes centrists shift towards Republicans. This is empirically proven by the extremely close 2020 election and empirically proven by a lot of centers where economic and conservative shifting towards Republican bases, which means that this always their argument on like literally trying to lay in historical precedent. But on the sub-point B, one, right now people still need data for protective policing. When physical surveillance goes up, people run implicit biases to send police to different areas. And second of all, the rejection of the NSA system creates police for other surveillance. We agree that targeting Black individuals in the status quo is bad, but affirming does absolutely nothing. We can just create the way for worse systems and worse inflation to happen. That's what we need to get.
Okay. Nice rebuttal. So the first thing we want to ask you questions about is the overview, the weighing overview right at the top. So why did you read this in rebuttal versus in case or in summary when you've already decided which link to go for?
I think honestly it was a lack of prep because like I think it was just like we're gonna establish that these links can go for offense, but at that time I think we were kind of favoring the other links, not necessarily the GCHQ. So we were like, oh, if they frontline this, but then they kind of lack on the other links, we can go for that as terminal defense as well. Kind of like a sneaky maneuver, but I think it was that, and it was just like I think the judge said that they liked weighing at the top, so we just like why not put weighing at the top?
Yeah, I guess kind of a related question off of this. So why is this overview 4 parts instead of just one thing, like overall, if we win case, we link it to theirs?
Honestly, I think maybe it was because we weren't as familiar with the case by then, but I just felt like it was easier to explain like how each individual link kind of interacted with the case as a whole. But honestly, now that I think back at it, I think one overall thing might have been good too. Especially if I use the Greenwald evidence at the top of the case, because that's like really solid evidence. It's like you can't count on the government to kind of control themselves. Therefore, if we win a link, we win terminal defense on their case.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely
Yeah.
a very good strat.
And I think, it's probably maybe a good idea because teams will be like, oh, they're dumping all its weighing. They'll either have to, line by line it in second rebuttal or just concede the weighing and go for a Lincoln. I mean, I know a lot of really good teams, red rebuttal weighing with like multiple 4 or 5 parts, like Saratoga RS, Blake, JS, etc. And so I guess that leads me into my next question, which is what do you think like in general, prepping a weighing overview, especially towards the first topics or the first tournaments on the topics, do you think it's a good idea just to, like shell out the weighing overview in like first rebuttal, second rebuttal? Like you've seen a lot of good teams like Blake, Saratoga, all these other good teams just read these like massive weighing overviews in the first tournament and topic because it's probably not very easy because you don't have a lot of prep and stuff. So is that a strategy you've utilized in the past?
I think that's pretty smart. I think especially if you're reading something with like I think structural violence, climate change, like these kind of big impacts. I think it's like really easy. Or I guess like these easily weighable impacts. I think it makes sense to have a weighing overview at the top. Like on Medicare for All, we have like this Trump Disad that linked into climate change, and at first we read it as a sole contention, which was really stupid. But then we eventually turned it into like a 3 contention case, and then every time someone uncovered, I think once someone read like 27 responses on Trump, like at the first tournament of the year, and I had to frontline all of them because like we had like that was like it was a sole contention case, right? So like as like the topic progressed, like we eventually knew how to frontline like every single response to Trump. So it was like if we had to, we could just go for it and go read the weighing overview. And I know we're kind of going away from the question, but I think it's strategic depending on the argument. Because if it's really bidirectional, then no. But if it's like structural violence, like very suited towards your specific Lincoln, then yes.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Do you also think like weighing and rebuttal is also a good idea? I think you've done it a lot, and I've tried it out. But do you think like in general it's a good idea to do weighing and rebuttal?
I think it's probably. I think it depends. It's like. I think not a lot of weighing, like you don't want to have like 4 pieces of weighing to every turn, but those just like implicate your turns and then just like weigh them. It's like, okay, yeah, like for example, that turn about which turn should I talk about? I guess the turn about predictive policing, right? Like the time frame term, it's like, okay, like well, it just like gives us like a bit more like linking, but more offense, just like makes it a bit harder to respond to, and it takes like 3 seconds, And like by chance, if the judge was like kind of slow and flowing it, which I think debaters underestimate sometimes, like judges aren't machines. It's like it kind of gives them a second to catch up to, Because like for one, all they have to write is like OWTF, and then they're done.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think maybe the downside to that would be, I know, so I don't know what your experience with this is, but I've definitely had a lot of teams who'd in second rebuttal just be like, oh, it's weighing, we can respond to it later. Or I think a couple of teams do that. And not a lot of judges are like, you have to respond to weighing. That's in first rebuttal and second rebuttal and so on. So yeah, I think that's kind of the problem I had, but it depends on the judge really.
I think it depends on like how you phrase the weighing, because like if they just like say, oh, ignore it, like it's weighing, it's like, okay, they can respond to the weighing later, but they have to come see the link on the turn, it's game over. Like you can pretty much implicate it like that.
Another thing I remember when I read weighing in rebuttal, like weighing of case, not even just weighing of turns, teams had a nasty habit of just dropping it and saying, I'll get to it on their case. So many teams did this. I hit really good teams who did this exact thing. And don't do that. You need to respond to their weighing, especially if it's on their case over yours. Because if you conceded it, now you've conceded reasons why my case is more important than yours, meaning if I win case, round's over. You've just made the round like 10 times easier for me to win.
100%.
Right. So I think let's talk about more specific questions. So I think let's start at the top of rebuttal with your overload strategy. This was, I don't think I've ever seen anyone read overload on neg. And for those who don't know, the argument was on the NSA topic. The NSA had too much information. They were overloaded and thus ineffective. And I guess just to quickly reiterate the argument the mod made in rebuttal, other agencies, so if you get rid of the NSA who's overloaded, they're useless, other agencies would fill in and basically do what the NSA does, except they're not overloaded. So they talk about the harms of the NSA. These other agencies who are not overloaded would do all those same harms, but a lot worse. So with this strategy, I guess like, was this something that you often went for that like you felt worked with your narrative pretty well? Or I guess like in general, what did you think about this strategy?
So like on the NSA, the neg usually was just like the NSA is good. We should keep the NSA, right? I feel like in this round, this is what I was actually talking about earlier, like with the information overload being able to use, you can use it on both sides. I feel like at this point we kind of agreed, like data bad. I think like both sides, like it was most rounds don't have that, and this round we did. So I was just like, okay, I'll read information overload. Like why not? If they respond to it, then kind of you're just saying that like the data collection is effective, and like worst case, it supercharges our Lincolns later on. So it's like, but best case, it's like, okay, like the NSA literally cannot do predictive policing right now. Like we pretty much just like flip the script. It's like we get offense off of their turns, or off of their links, sorry. So it's like I was just like, why not? It seems like a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
And we had good front lines for the information overload turn. So it's like, why not?
Yeah. I probably agree. Like overload, I think in general, overload screening is hard to beat, but especially the way you utilized it, kind of just like agreeing. I think that's probably something else that we talked about in the last podcast, but in general, being like, we both agree on this and this. So the debate is about this organization or this organization. So just like really narrowing it down. So we both agree on this and this. So let's just forget about that and do a comparison about the most important parts.
And doing that in first rebuttal is very powerful. Like it's one thing to be able to do that in final focus, but to be able to say that straight out of the gate, extremely powerful. You can set up the narrative really well.
I think that's honestly why this round was like it was a pretty good round. So I think that's like one of the reasons why we were able to narrow it down. Because we were able to narrow it down so much, it was a good round. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess the next question I would have to ask is, so it's about local policing. It's the I want to say your seventh link. And I think everyone I think everyone at the time maybe would have thought local policing is the most persuasive argument. So, they say you can go for like this narrative, which is the most common thing read against predictive policing after the topic, which was like, they're just using like data and AI and stuff, but it's a lot worse if actual police go in there and go into all these neighborhoods, police deployment, surveillance, and obviously, I think like from a truth perspective, just sort of a flame mindset or anyone in general, like when you just picture it, it's like, it seems so obviously bad, and it probably bolsters narrative a lot. So it's like, AI versus literally police invading neighborhoods. So is that like one of the reasons or is that like something that you knew you might have gone for against a predictive policing act because of its persuasiveness?
I kind of thought of that. I think in that round, like towards the end of it, like I was just like, I don't think honestly, I don't think I got the point across as well as I could have, because I was talking to like Molly after the round, and it was just uh like if I went for like that, like the specific weighing about how predictive policing, sorry, about how local police is worse, and I kind of got that like across better, I think we would have won that round. But like I think the way I was thinking about it was like local police, they don't need data and they don't need a reason to go into specific communities and like inflict harm, right? However, if you're using data, if you're using like predictive policing data, there needs to be some semblance of like, there is a crime that has happened here, therefore you go and investigate it, right? Obviously, that means that like 100 other people that like, I guess like were not like, to be blamed is like kind of like they're getting caught, like I guess caught in the midst of it. However, like the reason why local police is worse is because they don't even need the initial reason in the first place. They can just be like, look at demographics. There's Black people here, there's Latino people here, like under like there's minorities here. We're gonna go and like mess them up, you know? So it's like I think that's obviously worse than just like any sort of data at all.
I think another nice thing about this argument is that a lot of the responses to it are just really dumb. Like the apps all the time will say, we'll make arguments like, if there's no data, then the police don't know where to go. It's like, you really think the police are just going to forget where Black people live just because the
Yeah.
NSA isn't saying this is where the Black people are? Like, it's just not a very smart argument. But you
Yeah.
know, it's not to say that every
Also,
argument against this is bad. But a lot of them tend to be.
yeah. Also, just like it's in the name, like local police, like they live in the area. Like obviously, like a cop from San Jose or like I guess like the Bay Area isn't gonna go down to like where Black people live in LA. They're gonna go in the area because they're local police. Like just like it's in the name.
Yeah. Okay. The next question I have for you, or we have for you, so one thing you did a lot in this rebuttal is you make cross apps on their case from like specific links. So, for example, on C1 you implicated FBI. I don't remember if you implicated UK link, but you implicated links a couple times in their case, even after you had read their overview. So what do you think is the strategic or maybe the narrative value to this when you already have the overview that's doing the cross apping?
I think again it was just like misdirection. It's like which link are they gonna go for, and it kind of makes them like slow down and like respond to every single link properly. Because like I think we kind of made it to that. Like if they didn't if they respond to a link that has like link-ins and weighing on it, well obviously we're gonna like get the link in part of it down, and like we'll be able to link in. But if they like don't respond to the other stuff, it's like okay, we just have like clean weighing now. Just it's pretty easy to do. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess the more weighing you have, the easier it is. As long as you win the case, you just win the round.
Yeah, that's kind of what's like this whole topic was like. It's like we just have to get good with the weighing because we would win a link. Like we would win a link. It would just like it would happen.
Yeah, especially if you read 7 links, like you're gonna win one of them. Let's be honest. Like,
And they're all like true. You know, it's like I guess to an extent, the evidence is good. I'll say that.
Yeah, and I think y'all were one of the only, or I don't know if a lot of people read Circumvention with a lot of good evidence, but I think the fact that you did in this case, especially, I think the thing is, I remember looking through all this evidence at the time because I think it was open source, but especially one about the GCHQ was pretty good in the way. I think it also these linkage also help set up your narrative, in rebuttal. So
Yeah.
I think the next thing is doing weighing on turns. So generally it's considered a good thing to do weighing on turns because you read like a turn, they concede the turn and the weighing or only respond to the turn. They've already conceded the weighing, sets it up pretty cleanly for the back half. But a lot of teams have or sort of struggle with how much to weigh the turns. So some teams will do it pretty longly, like do a long implication, which probably isn't the best in terms of efficiency. And other teams will just be like super quick, like this is how it's go, and then move on, which is really not saying anything substantive at all. But how would you like recommend weighing your turns?
Honestly, I was kind of guilty of the second one sometimes. Like it's like therefore this always in scope and move on. But I think if I had to redo some of those and just like kind of go through the year again, I think it would be like therefore our turn outweighs on scope because like the data collection is more extensive and therefore you can get more accurate or like it's just like you can manipulate the data easier. Just like just like so just a warrant, throw a warrant in there. So but I think like blippy weighing is probably the best, like blippy. It's like have a turn, it's like one piece of weighing, this prereq this outweighs on scope, this link, like I don't know, just like random weighing, and just like have one sentence why it's true, and just like I think that's probably the most effective.
Okay. Next question we have for you. So one thing you do at the top of C2 or whatever their second link was about protests, is you set up a uniqueness picture right away. You say, okay, you're saying that protests are being squashed, but like look around you. The biggest movement of like racial protest that's happened in the past like 50 years is happening as we speak. So how do you think painting that uniqueness picture in rebuttal helps you out with your narrative or maybe your strategy going into the back half of the round?
Well, if I remember correctly, they didn't go for that. They,
Well, yeah, but how in general does it help you when you read uniqueness on top of case responses?
I think if it's like true unique, it's like, bro, like look outside the window. It's like, it's just like true arguments are just like, how do you respond to that? It's like, okay, I feel like obviously I understood what they're saying about how the NSA has like historically done like bad things, but I felt like the extent of like their impact was just like not matching up with it. And I think that's what uniqueness can do like really, really well. It's like if you win the uniqueness picture, even if they win the link and they win all that stuff, right? That's like significantly mitigates the impact of it, right? Because let's say like we won the uniqueness, like protests are happening right now. So what's their impact? Protests get a little bit better in their world. Okay, sure, I can beat that with GCHQ.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. There's certainly, I mean, we talked about this last time, but I'll just say it again because you need to hear it again. There's a ton of value from winning uniqueness. Helps you out with your turns. If you win uniqueness and it's true uniqueness, as Naman just said, that's it. That's just it.
Yeah.
You win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
this topic is a little bit weird for you, these pictures, but they did bring up a lot of like historical stuff. So, but yeah, I think in general, that's just pretty true. I guess also like just the last quick question. So in terms of how many turns you would read, so like if this wasn't a circumvention round, or maybe you'd been more prepped, and they read, well, what was it, the two contentions? Well, I think it was like protest.
They read a lot of arguments. It was like two links, two independent impacts with links, and like one contention. It was like it wasn't like less.
Gotcha. But let's say, did you have a prep for this round? Do you know?
This is round 6 against Maris, right?
Yeah.
We prepped it out, but I believe they read a different case than the one they prepped out. They read pretty good policing the same, but I think it was like they broke new because it was, I mean, their first tournament. So
yeah, definitely. So I think the question would be, in terms of how many turns you should be reading in a a higher level technical round. And I think you were going first. Yeah, you're going first. I know this round was a little bit weird because if you can't, it's a little weird to read like NSA good turns, given circumvention and overload and the such. But
yeah,
in general rounds, you think you should try to read as many turns as you can, or what's your thoughts or philosophy on the balance between disads, direct link responses, turns? Like what do you think the split generally should be?
honestly, I think disads are probably like, if you don't know how to respond to an argument, like link random disads to it. Like it's just like just read three turns and just like implicate them, link them. Probably the best way to respond to an argument with a couple of analytics, right? And then I think turns, like they're really good against teams that like just like read 7 arguments, because if you straight turn 4 of them, like it's gonna be a pretty tough rebuttal. I'll say that. Unless you do some magic, then like you're kind of screwed. But I think straight turning is probably like turning, only using turns. That's probably the most strategic when they dump. But I think like turns are probably better than defense, anyways, and for the most part.
Yeah, I definitely really agreed with the first thing you said. So I think this is something I might have talked a bit about in the last podcast, but reading generic disads and then like using analytical weighing to like link them in or like prereq their case. That's kind of always the prep strat I had on the first topics of the tournament, or first tournaments on the topic. Like I'll make case, front end weighing, whatever, but a couple of generic disads, overview type arguments, reading those and then sprinkling in a little prereq weighing or implications to their case. I think it's always a good thing, because like analytics are good, but I think you can read both the disads with the prereq weighing as well as analytics. So you also garner some offensive rebuttal. And that way you don't have to, prep specific turns each topic or each argument when you're prepping, in order to, time cube a little bit. But yeah, definitely 100% agree. That's why I try to prep Disads on the first tournaments and topics. But yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
More on the framing that they've consistently been dropping throughout the round is that if the comparative is words, reform does not matter. The only thing it says is that the data specific to the NSA, citing an example from the 1961, they'll give you a warning as to why that's the thing in the status quo. Don't give you a new one. Second, final focus. And second, the impact is that mass surveillance the police can use. This is a double bind, actually. One, either the police gets far more comprehensive and better data they can use for predictive policing, which is also bad, or second, they act on their own implicit biases in every single local community, which means in every single community is far more comprehensive data and far more comprehensive predictive policing, which is a lot worse. Go to the overview. They say we contradicted. We dropped the other response, which is why we still get access to this one. One, the NSA information overload means that the current data is bad in the status quo. The NSA cannot use this data in the status quo, which means the predictive policing is inherently failing the school. The risk of changing that is when you affirm, because when information overload goes away, there's literally the only way you can get it is like through better data and through really more effective data. That's our argument. That's terminal defense on their case. But then go to our case. The first thing you can sign your ballot is in the local police argument. The only response they extend in summary is that it's not mass, it's local. That is our argument. We're saying that when police systems and local policing get access to act upon their own implicit biases, they do more comprehensive policing on local communities. We call up the impact of 3 for Black mortality because we tell you that every single local police force can do far more comprehensive stuff on every single local system. And the second, the warrant is very clean. Whether it's a foreign or a broad scale thing, that is a broad level thing. When you can act on local systems, you can do it far more comprehensively. It happens in every single local community, not just a top shelf. But the third place you can sign your ballot is on the Greenwald evidence. The Greenwald evidence finds that the NSA always is trying to circumvent regulations, which is why the cheating evidence finds that the United Kingdom has had more comprehensive analysis of data upon our own domestic search. I'll call it the evidence. It's very explicit. It says the United Kingdom can do the surveillance in 2 days, whereas it takes us like an entire month. Insofar as that's true, this round breaks down very simple. Either at the top shelf, the United Kingdom fills in and gives more comprehensive and better data that the predictive policing can use better because the NSA is still going to give them to local policing if they think it's better. Or second, the algorithms still analyze the data in a racist way, which means you copy all their offense. Or third, the local polices get a lot more, they can act on the internal, their implicit biases, which is a lot worse because they're often inherently racist as a whole. It's a very clean neg ballot.
So you started this final with weighing. Is this something you typically do, starting order-wise, weighing their case, our case? I know this round is a little different because your case interacts quite well. But I think we talked about this last time, starting the top of final off of weighing and how it sets up narrative really well in final and good for world comparison. Do you think it's something you do pretty often, or?
I think it's more for this topic. I think usually my order is like, I start on their case and it's just like, I just like doing that. Like I start on their offense and then I go to our case and then I just like, the thing I did at the end, just like this round breaks down like A, B, C. Like I like doing that. Like it just like makes it clear in my head, I guess. And then like for the last 15 seconds, that's usually my final focus, like a formula.
Yeah. Is there a reason you do their case first, or?
I guess it just makes more sense to me because like I think it had something to do with just like when I was like looking at the flow, it was just like I'm looking down. I don't know. I think it was just like it was just easier. I forgot the exact reason, but I think it just like flowed better for me, and I was just like, why not? And the judge, I think it was just like the judge usually like had that flow first anyway, so just like okay, I'll finish this, and then I'll go to my case and like I'll implicate it too.
Yeah, makes sense. And yeah, the next question was actually about the thing you do at the end there. So you sort of lay it out pretty clean for the judge. This round goes down either A, you vote on that, or A, you vote here, B, you vote there, C, you vote here. Is it like good to sort of like give a little recap at the end? A lot of good teams do these sort of recappy things.
Yeah.
But do you suggest doing those?
I think it's a good idea. Like makes it like, especially like I'm not gonna lie, like flow judges aren't often like the best judges. Like they stop paying attention in the middle. It's like they miss something. And just like having that whole like recap thing makes it just like, okay, that sounds reasonable. I heard summary, I heard final focus, sure.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. I always used to try, especially fillet rounds.
Flavor.
Yeah, A, B, C. Super persuasive.
So how does your narrative wind up working with circumvention by final? How does it kind of evolve over the course of the round?
I guess we weren't really looking at narrative by the end of it because like I think like Molly's pretty flow in us. So it was just like where are we getting offense from? Where aren't we? And I think one thing that could have done a lot better in this final focus was the thing about how mass systems can't inflict violence on small communities as well as local systems can. And I think I just kept saying that sentence, like the like a similar sentence, but like the warrant just like wasn't like clicking for anyone except for me in my head. So like what I was trying to say with that was that like let's say you have a group of like you have like a predominantly minority neighborhood that's just like a population of say like 5 to 1,000 to 10,000. Like I think that's a small town. So the NSA as a big large entity cannot inflict damage upon that community unless the data that goes through like a bunch of like I guess like intermediate systems. But like the alternative to that is the local police systems that already kind of like like the watchdogs of the NSA, they can do whatever they want. And that's why these local systems, like local like communities, that's why they can be like more violence inflicted upon them. That's what I was trying to say. It just wasn't trying to come. It wasn't like coming across. I think if we got that warrant across, I think we would have won that. So
Yeah, I think I agree. I think I either watched this one or the trips round. I think I said something similar after watching it. But yeah, 100% I agree. If we got that across a little bit more cleanly, it would have been um
oh
more
yeah, wait, sorry.
persuasive.
I didn't even talk about narrative, but like the thing about narrative was, I think if for flow rounds we usually broke up narrative. It was just like okay, we the most narrative we'd usually do was just like the Greenwald evidence frames this around very simply. You don't trust the NSA to watch itself. Therefore, we're going for these two links. And like that's not the narrative you pretty well usually because like Greenwald and then AB and then their case. So it was pretty decent narrative no matter what we did usually. So
Yeah.
So
And
you mentioned that the place where you think you like messed up most in this final was you would like say the warrant, but it wouldn't like come across to everyone in the round. And I know I've seen a lot of final foci where this has like kind of been the issue. I've had this issue in my final focuses as well, where I
Mhm.
just like miss one important narrative, which if everyone had understood better, would have won me the round. So do you have any like advice or strategies for how we can make sure that you get that narrative into your final focus?
I mean, I guess like redos for like you can do it after the fact, but I think when you're in the moment, maybe just take a second to kind of just like the important, I guess like go through it in your head. Like, okay, this is what I need to do to win the round. I need to like respond to this argument in this manner. I need to do the weighing in this manner, and then I need to talk about this argument in this manner. Like just like take like 10 seconds of prep, think about it, and that usually it kind of makes everything fall in place a lot better. I think that's probably the best I'd say for in the round, but most of it just comes from like practice phrasing things outside of the round. So yeah.
and something a little cheap. Well, I try to do that, but I never really had a lot of prep going into the final because we use up a lot of prep. But I try to like when I was giving my roadmap, I would try to just think about it real quick, how I was gonna do things, how I was gonna phrase things. So I'd give a pretty slow roadmap, take my time.
Mhm.
It's a little trick for organizing speeches.
Fair
Um,
enough.
yeah. So I think it's something we talked about a little bit or we talked about a little bit in the last podcast, but spending time on terminal defense. Do you think there's ever a time where you should just go 100% for terminal defense and just spend a lot more time on that than like weighing or case?
I mean, I think like spending your entire final focus on terminal defense, it means a lot of weighing because like by itself, a lot of arguments are not terminal defense. Like they're going to be marginal in one way, marginal in the other. And I think that the weighing needs to be like very concrete, right? It's like for example, our GCHQ argument, right? Like it left no room for error. Like there was not less data, there was more data. So if anything, the margin of error went towards us, like things like that. So there's definitely going to be weighing, but I think if you're first, like I think if you're neg first, it's often going to be like a lot easier because like the presumption just like lines up for you. But like if you're, I guess if you're af second, then just like okay, maybe not.
Yeah, deflection, presumption warrants are a pretty important factor in that decision.
Yep.
Thank you so much for coming on today, Naman. If there are any other debaters or teams y'all want to hear from, let us know in the comments. And of course, if there are any other top debaters that want to be on the podcast, hit me or niche up. We might be able to get you on the channel. Make sure to drop a sub, hit the like button if you like the video. It's free, helps us out in the algorithm so more people see the video. Adios, y'all.